when people encounter Pure Land Buddhism for the first time, some of them feel shocked and think, well, that's not Buddhism, or not Buddhism as they know it. Some feel confused because it seems, on the surface, at first take, to be very different from a lot of what they've read in books or they've heard from other people. And some feel huge relief. Thank goodness that I've found a different perspective on all this. When I myself first encountered Pure Land Buddhism many years ago, I rejected it, put it on the shelf, didn't take to it at all. I was very much involved in meditation practice, and despite a lot of rhetoric about being in the present moment and aimlessness and goallessness and so on, really I had a deep ambition to get somewhere with this practice. I wanted results, and I think many of the other people who practiced with me were in much the same boat. I started off practicing samatha with a Burmese teacher, and then I also was practicing with a well-known Kajapa teacher. And in due course I discovered Zen, and Zen had the reputation of being a very direct path, so that definitely grabbed me, and I did many hundreds of hours of meditation and intense retreats and had satori experiences and learned wonderful things, learned a great deal. It was a very rich, important time in my life. My search for right livelihood turned my domestic life upside down. I tried to be a monk and a layperson at the same time, like so many Western practitioners are struggling to do, keeping up rigorous practice regimes at the same time as living in a busy, stressful world, such as most of us do. So I wasn't really leaning in the Pure Land direction at all. And it wasn't until many years later that I discovered it again and saw it in a completely new way. And I want to try and convey some of that sense to you. Because really Pure Land is, it's a mood, it's a sense, it's a movement within Buddhism that has a particular quality, and that quality is quite a subtle, soft, emotional quality. When the great prophet of Pure Land in Japan, Honans, as they say, descended from the mountain in 1175 and started to declare a new message, as it were, a message that had been transmitted from India to China, from China to Japan, but which he then rediscovered through his own deep experience. He had something important to say, and Honans' message was pretty simple, really. Honans saw that and said that if the consummation of what was to be achieved in Buddhism, if salvation or enlightenment or whatever we care to call it, came through acquiring sufficient merit, then very largely the poor were going to be excluded. Only the rich could endow great temples and earn the kind of merit that would be necessary. If it required the perfection of wisdom, then only the most intelligent, the IQ elite of society would be in the running. The great majority would be excluded. If this attainment depended upon purifying your mind, or mind training, or controlling your mind, bringing your mind under the direction of your will, then evidently the vast majority of us would not be in that group. The great majority of people would be excluded. If it depended upon keeping certain precepts, perfecting your moral life, then, well, if we're honest, the great majority of us would be excluded. And Honan was looking for something that didn't exclude the great majority of people. He was looking for something that would not be elitist in that way. When Honan had been a little boy, his father had been assassinated. There were lots of wars going on in Japan at that time. And Honan's father, who was a minor government official, was assassinated. He was shot by an archer. And as the father lay there dying, the little boy went to his side. And the father's dying words to his son were to the effect that the little boy should not seek revenge, which would be the normal thing to do in that society, in that context, would be to go and avenge this crime. Don't seek revenge, seek the Dharma. And the essence of this message was that the Dharma had the capacity to end this kind of feuding, that it had the capacity to end this kind of war, this kind of tit for tat, this endlessly seeking revenge, endlessly seeking to right the wrong done by doing some more wrong, which was the blight of Japan at that time, and has been the blight of our planet in many ways. So Honan got this message from his father that the Dhamma could be the salvation for all. Now, that doesn't mean just the salvation for a tiny minority who can jump through some very restrictive spiritual hoops. For all. And this was Honan's great challenge and great search. How could the Dhamma be something for all? For sinners as well as the virtuous, for those with minds that stray, as well as for those who have their minds tightly under control and have done all their meditative practices and so on. How could the Dhamma be a salvation for all? And this was his search through his period as a monk, because what happened subsequently after his father died was that his mother sent him to a nearby temple that was run by an uncle, and the uncle spotted that this little boy had a lot of talent and sent him off to Mount Hiei, which was one of the great holy mountains of Japan, where there were many, many temples. And Honan went there and studied assiduously. He practiced, he did all the practices that various teachers on the mountain taught him, and it had a wonderful library. He read all the books and so on. Now, this meant that he was in a very special, privileged situation himself. And when he looked at himself seriously, after many years of practice, he said, if I'm honest, I haven't actually kept any precept perfectly. I haven't achieved any of these criteria that are there in these wonderful Buddhist texts. I haven't got there. And yet, Honan, we know from other records, viewed from the outside, everybody thought Honan was a saint. They thought he was one of the best practitioners around. He knew the texts he practiced them, he was extremely virtuous to outside observation. But from his own self-examination, he was nowhere near up to the mark, up to the bar, as you might say, that was set there in many of these Buddhist texts and many of these practices that he was trying to accomplish. And so Honan would say, well, if I can't do it, given that everybody says I'm well above average intelligence, I'm living in the most ideal circumstances on the Holy Mountain, with all the best teachers in the country, with the solitude and the everything conspiring to give me the best possible circumstances to achieve this, who can? And now this message of Honans really speaks to me personally, spoke to me personally, still speaks to me personally. As I said, I studied in Theravada Buddhism, I studied in Tibetan Buddhism, I studied in Zen Buddhism, I studied in Vietnamese Buddhism, and I worked really hard at it. I can't say that I was anything like matching Honan's level, but, you know, as an ordinary sort of guy, I gave it my all. I threw myself into it. I really did have a go. And it's true, I did, you know, these practices brought me many wonderful things. I've certainly made some progress, I can say. There is relative improvement. Some people criticize me now, but they should have seen me years ago. But you know, I have to face the fact that if I ask the sort of basic question, have I cut off the 3 poisonous roots? You know, have I cut off greed, hate and delusion at their base? No. Am I an achieved arahat? No, nowhere near it. Recently I was on a journey to a important European Buddhist teachers gathering in Switzerland, and on the way we had a few mishaps on the journey. The train broke down just as we entered Germany. Consequently, we were 35 minutes late precisely at Frankfurt. Well, my switchover time in Frankfurt was exactly 35 minutes. So this meant that by the time I'd run from one platform to the other one, I was just in time to see my train disappearing down the track. Well, I had a few feelings, you know. Greed, hate and delusion, well, yes, definitely. You know, I was greedy to be on that train, and I was full of hate that my, you know, in the technical Buddhist sense of the term, that my travel plans were now all awry. And I certainly had a degree of that delusion that says, why does this always happen to me? Why is the whole German rail system conspiring to make my life, me, you know, the important person, really miserable? Well, it didn't last long. It passed. You know, and maybe the fact that these feelings were fleeting owes something to the meditation training and all that I've done. But I can't say that it wasn't there. Yeah? The ego is alive and well and living in David Brazier, you know. It's here. And the physical symptomatology of all that, you can't deny. So, and I think most of the other Buddhist teachers that I know, the people who've accomplished and studied and practiced with the same sort of rigor as I have, perhaps even more, would feel much the same thing on the same platform when the same thing happened. We don't get rid of our ego. We do remain deluded beings full of wayward passions, It only takes a sufficient change of circumstance to bring it all out. If we think we're not in that bag, we're kidding ourselves, the vast majority of us. And if you're one of the sort of 0.001% of whom that's not true, then you're probably not watching this video. So, realism about human nature, very important. Pureland Buddhism starts from the position that we are deluded beings. We are not going to do it by our own effort. We do need help. We need a refuge. We need to turn to something that will have a powerful effect upon us. The whole idea that it all comes from within, that somehow if I can just find my Buddha nature and realize it, all will be well. From the Pure Land point of view, Honan would say, yes, that's all true, and these practices will get you there, but the vast majority of us are not capable. The vast majority of us simply can't do it. We can gain something from doing a whole variety of different practices, including many non-Buddhist practices. You know, there's many exercises you can do that have intrinsic benefits, from martial arts to flower arranging and you name it. But they're not going to get you the complete consummation that's written about in the sutras. And since that is the case, there may be a more sane way of entering the Dhamma by admitting it, by starting from that point, starting from the point that I am not going to achieve enlightenment by my own effort. My own self-power is simply inadequate to arrive at this point. What I need is a refuge. What I need is a source of spiritual help. And that's what refuge is all about. And that's what other power Buddhism is all about. When the Buddha died, there would have been some people who saw the Buddha as a great pioneer. And they would say, what we must do is follow in his footsteps, do what he did and achieve what he was. Well, fine. And if you can do that, I take my hat off to you and say, great, and get on with it. And don't waste time watching this video. Get off to your cave and do it. But for the great majority of people, they would be in a different bag. There would be other people who said, well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about the Buddha being somebody to follow in that way. My experience was, Shakyamuni, he just wandered into my village one day. So I had a meeting with him. Since then, my life's never been the same. Now, that wasn't the result of me doing 10 years training building up to it. That wasn't the result of me making some stupendous effort or whatever. It was a result of a direct encounter with that man, with the spirit that that man embodied. Now, Shakyamuni Buddha's long dead, but we still have to make a meeting with that spirit. And that's what Pure Land Buddhism is all about.